Hunters have done very well at the Solar 3.0 rework, making them viable in endgame activities, plus they dish out that huge DPS with their super. Well, today I'm going to be checking out a Hunter Solar 3.0 build, so one that's going to take advantage of Scorch, Restoration and Radiant effects. Plus you're going to be squashing endgame bosses in seconds with this massive DPS output. I'm going to run through the Solar 3.0 setup, the exotic armour, the mods and also the weapons too, so stick around and let's get to it. Well, if you're new around here or find this useful, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below for all the latest Destiny 2 content and turn on notifications by hitting that bell. And roughly 98% of viewers who watch This Week in Video Games aren't subscribed, so subscribe today and never miss an update. So while the Solar 3.0 rework didn't go great for everybody, Hunters appear to have a great deal when it comes to boss DPS and also crowd control too. Well, this season we've also got classy Restoration, which is a bonus, and yes, it is most likely going to go away at the end of the season, but it could be replaced with something even better, you never know. Well, this build I'm focusing on today for Hunters has a few objectives. First of all, we want to apply as many Scorch stacks to targets as possible, and second, we're going to be using our Radiant and Restoration effects, plus we want to create as many elemental wells as we can to increase our overall damage output. Well, talking about DPS, I'm going to be using Shards of Galanor, and that allows us to refund a bunch of super energy and combine that with their aspect knock 'em down so we can maximise our DPS output. Well, we're going to be scorching with our throwing knife, our grenade and also our weapons through the perk Incandescent. Build up enough scorch stacks and our enemies are going to explode. Then through our fragments we're going to be applying radiant effects to ourselves and our fire team too, so there's plenty of ways we can damage our opponents. We're going to be using our dodge to get out of harm's way, as well as instantly recharging our melee and getting the benefits of classy Restoration. And this one is one of the strongest builds for Hunters in the game right now. There's loads of new solar keywords going on here, but here are the important ones that we care about for the build. So being radiant means we're boosting our damage output by about 20 to 25%. Restoration allows us to generate health and shields over time, so if we're being overwhelmed by enemies, we can simply dodge to get our health back. Without further delay, let's dive into the build. So let's have a look at the Solar 3.0 setup. For my super, I'm using Blade Barrage. For my class ability, I'm using Gambler's Dodge, so dodging near enemies recharges the melee ability. For my melee, I'm using Knife Trick, so throw a fan of flaming knives that scorch targets on hit. Then for my grenade, I'm using the Fusion Grenade. In regards to my aspects, I'm using Knock 'em Down, so Blade Barrage launches more projectiles, and while Radiant, Final Blows with any equipped throwing knife fully refund melee energy. And then I'm using On Your Mark, so Precision Final Blows grant players and nearby allies increased weapon handling and reload speed for a short duration. That stacks 3 times, and activating the class ability immediately grants stacks of On Your Mark. So for the fragments, I'm using 5 here, so we've got Ember of Solace, Radiant and Restoration effects applied to players have an increased duration. Ember of Empyrean, so solar weapons or ability final blows extend the duration of Restoration and Radiant effects, although that does give you a -10 on resilience. I'm using Ember of Singeing, class ability recharges faster when targets are Scorch, and Ember of Searing, so defeating Scorch targets grants melee energy and adds 10 to recovery. I'm using Ember of Torches, so powered melee attacks against combatants make players and nearby allies radiant, and all of that combines really well with our exotic armour. So talking about our exotic armour, Shards of Galanor, our Hunter exotic gauntlets, that comes with the perk Sharp Edges, so hits and kills with Blade Barrage will return super energy after the super ends. Next up, let's have a look at the weapons, so we can be a little bit flexible with the weapons. So I'm going to be using a lot of solar weapons because I've got a solar subclass, and that's going to help me generate elemental wells. Although in the kinetic slot, I think it's a good idea to use a stasis weapon, as that gives you an extra piece of damage output, which is going to help you tear through enemies. Okay, so let's have a look at the weapons then. So in my kinetic slot, I'm using Burden of Guilt. This one is a legendary kinetic fusion rifle with an adaptive frame. I mean, it's got a well-rounded grip, it's reliable, and it's sturdy. This one is great because it is a stasis weapon, as I just mentioned. If you can get one with Chill Clip, that is going to really increase your effectiveness in PvE combat. You're going to be freezing enemies while killing them. Well, in the energy slot, I'm using the Callus Mini Tool. This one is a legendary energy submachine gun, mean it's got superb handling, and you move faster with the lightweight weapon equipped. So I've got one with incandescent, that means defeating a target spreads scorch to those nearby. Going to work really well with the Solo 3.0 build. And then more powerful combatants and opposing guardians cause scorch in a larger radius. In my power slot, I'm using Galanor. That is an exotic power rocket launcher that fires solar damage and comes with some pretty special perks. You've got Wolfpack rounds, so rounds fired split into tracking cluster missiles upon detonation, and Pack Hunter, so gain increased handling and reload speed when standing near allies, and firing the weapon also grants Wolfpack rounds to nearby allies wielding non-exotic rocket launchers. So basically, your teammates are going to love you if they are wielding rockets and you've got Galanor. You can get this one by owning the 30th anniversary pack of Visiting Shorehan on the Cosmodrome. Well, next up, let's have a look at the mods. So players should be prioritising high mobility and high resilience stats for the hunters. But also, I've got elemental well mods here. So that increases your damage output after picking up an elemental well. I'm also going to be throwing in Class E Restoration because it is Season of the Haunted and it probably is the most overpowered mod that we have at the moment. But if you're watching this video in the future and we don't have Class E Restoration, not to worry, I'm sure something has replaced it, or you can use the build as is. Well, let's have a look at the Elemental Well mods then. So I'm using Elemental Ordnance. Defeating a combatant with a grenade spawns an Elemental Well. Matches your subclass energy type, so that is going to be a Solar Elemental Well. Then I'm using Bountiful Wells, so Elemental Well mods that cause you to spawn Elemental Wells can now stack, spawning additional wells for each additional copy of the mod you have equipped. So basically, if I have Elemental Ordnance equipped and I use my grenade, that is going to spawn one Elemental Well. But if I pair that up with Bountiful Wells and more Elemental Ordnance, say I have two, that is going to spawn two Elemental Wells. I'm also using Seeking Wells, that is quite useful. I'm also using Font of Might, so picking up an Elemental Well that matches your subclass energy type grants a temporary bonus to weapon damage for that same elemental type. So basically, pick up Solar Elemental Wells, and that will increase your damage output. Finally, I'm using Class C Restoration, so activating your Solar class ability grants you Restoration. So if you're in a tight spot, use your class ability, and that is going to heal you almost instantly. Well, let me know in the comments what you think of the build, and let me know if you've got any improvements. And that is it for this huge DPS and crowd control hunter Solar 3.0 build with Shards of Galanor in Destiny 2. And as always, thank you so much for watching or listening. For more Destiny 2 content like this, hit that subscribe button down below and subscribe to This Week in Video Games. Or you can check me out on Twitter at TWIVG Podcast. If you enjoyed this video, found it useful, liking and sharing the video would really help me out. Otherwise, check out the other videos on the channel. Well, thanks again. I'll see you soon.